Hi there, everyone. Look comfy on those beanbag chairs. Hello, I'm Marisa Bellack. I'm an editor at the Washington Post, a charter sponsor of the book festival, and I'm pleased to introduce Meg Medina, author of books for children, preteens, and young adults that feature strong Latina characters grappling with questions of culture and identity and facing some of the central challenges of our time. Meg touches on family separation in her book, Tía Isa Wants, which received the 2012 Ezra Keats New Writer Award. She deals with migration in her young adult novel, The Girl Who Could Silence the Wind. She writes about bullying in Yaqui Delgado Wants to Kick Your Ass, which was banned from some school libraries and yet won the American Library Association's top honor for Latino children and young authors. Although she was named Margaret Rose after the sister of Queen Elizabeth, Meg is the daughter of Cuban immigrants. She was born in Virginia and raised in Queens. She's a founding member of We Need Diverse Books and regularly notes the depressing statistic that less than 3% of children's books are by or about Latinos. I imagine she may speak about that some here today. Her newest book is Merci Suárez Changes Gears. It's a story, she says, about how to say goodbye to the important things in life. The book actually isn't out until September 11th, but I understand there are copies available at the festival, and Meg is scheduled for a signing session from 5 to 6 this evening. Before we dive into our discussion, I'm supposed to mention that the Library of Congress has been the festival's host since the festival began 18 years ago. I want to thank festival co-chairman David Rubenstein and the many sponsors who made this event possible. You can support the festival with a donation. There's information in your program. Please note, too, that there will be time for questions after Meg's remarks, and anyone who asks a question will be filmed for the library's archives. Now, please help me welcome Meg Medina.
Buenas tardes. Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for coming out tonight and this afternoon. And you're right, you can't see anybody from up here. So you're all invisible except for these really comfortable kids on the beanbag chairs. And next year, can you please ask them to put a beanbag chair up here for me? Because that would be kind of fun to be able to talk with you from there. So I am here. This is me and my Bitmoji. I discovered Bitmojis like a year ago, and now I'm unstoppable. I have a Bitmoji for everything. And this is Meg Bitmoji, who's going to be our concierge today. And I'm here to talk about Merci Suárez Changes Gears. And you notice that it's a girl on a bike, and we do change gears on a bike, and it becomes harder to pedal. But we change gears over the course of our life, and that's sort of the idea of that book. That book did not start as a novel. It started like this. I was asked to write a story for an anthology, which is a collection of stories called Flying Lessons and Other Stories. And it had some really great authors. Some of my favorites were in there, like Jackie Woodson and Kwame Alexander and Matt de la Peña and others. And so when they asked me to write a story, they said, Meg, we want a story. The only thing you have to do is make sure that the character is Latina like you. You can tell us any story that you want to tell us. And I said, I can. And all of us did. Here are some of us at ALA one year. So I was thinking about it, and I thought back. I had a memory of a time when I was playing with my best friend when I was in elementary school. And my best friend in elementary school, I think you know her. Her name's Raquel, but you know her as R.J. Palacio, who wrote Wonder. And so we lived like a block and a half away from each other. And Raquel is from Colombia, and my family was from Cuba. And so our mothers could talk to each other in Espanol, and we were good friends. And one day, Raquel and I were in the back of her house, and the ambulance came. And the police came. And all these adults were standing around and not letting us look. And we were like, what happened, right? And so sadly, what had happened is that there was a gentleman who lived in her building by himself, an older gentleman, and he had passed away, he had died, and no one knew. And so we, as little kids, were like, oh my gosh, we've been in this building with a dead body for days. And we were all freaked out about this. But over time, over the years, I've thought about that man and his living alone and the way that he passed away. And it was just a story that just always stuck with me. So when I was writing Soul Painting, the story, I started with a dead body that's found in the condominium in Florida where Merci Suárez lives. And that morning, her father, who owns Soul Painting Inc., arrives to pick her up, her and her brother Rolly, and they're going to spend the day painting the gym at their new school in exchange for tuition reduction. And of course, her father notices there's this apartment with the person who died, etc. And then the story is really about what it's like to be the scholarship kid in a school where everybody sort of has more money than you. And it's a story about what that looks like and what that feels like and what it's like for a kid to see their family making sacrifices for them. Okay, it was a great story. I loved it. The book did really well. I even did the recording of it in my own voice, which was really fun and a little scary. But when I was finished, I thought I was not really finished, because here's what happens to writers. The character gets in your brain. It's like a worm. And then I'd be walking around going, I wonder who else Merci lived with in Florida. I wonder how it really went for her at Seward Pines Academy. I wonder who the pain in the neck is in her class. I wonder, does she have primos and tías and tíos? Like, what's the whole shebang? And so my editor, Kate, who's this woman in the picture, we were together one day and I was explaining to her that I couldn't get Merci and Rolly and Papi and Mami out of my head. And she said, that's because you're not finished with the story. You have to keep writing. So I did. And I decided, okay, I'm going to turn this story into a novel. And that's the story that is now Merci Suárez Changes Gears. Here's the thing. That's what it looked like as a story, and this is the cover now. But here's the thing. Turning a story into a novel is like turning a fish into a mango. So, the fish and the mango are both colorful. They're the same. The fish and the mango, you could say, are kind of tropical. That's the same. If you want to be really scary, you could say you could eat both of those things. Yes, that's true. But they're nothing the same. And that's the thing about writing a novel. That a story is just like a tiny little piece of someone's life, but a novel is the whole thing. So I had to rethink this whole story. And I decided that I was going to think about family because that's what I normally write about. So I don't know what your family is like, but I'm going to tell you about my familia. When I think family, it was not me and Mami and my sister Lydia. When I say family, I mean it in a big way. With my aunts and my uncles and my grandmother, I'm the kid in the yellow dress. And the ladies is my aunt, my mother, my grandmother, and my other aunt, Tía Hera and Tía Isa. And over here, looking very miserable on the day of my Holy Communion, is me with Abuela Fefa and Abuela Vena. Abuela Vena is this one on this side. She was very interesting. She used to watch Lucha Libre, which is masked Mexican wrestling on TV. And she would always be my after-school babysitter and tell me crazy kinds of scary stories, like when the hurricane wiped out her village, etc. And Fefa was my father's mother, and she was the scary abuela. Do you have scary abuelas, grandmas sometimes? Very strict, who make you eat radishes and your salad, and they insist that you wash your hands, and you have to be a little more formal than you normally are. That was Abuela Fefa. And she was also a seamstress. That's a person who sews clothes. She worked in Manhattan. And every year on my birthday, Abuela Fefa would show up with bags filled with my entire wardrobe for the year, which was great because my mother worked in a factory. She could not afford to buy me clothes, and Fefa made them all without asking me once what color I liked, whether I wanted shorts, a dress, nada, right? They came. And you see this picture of me in the bed? I have 12 of them, one for every year of my life, right? I'm sitting. It was a staged photograph, and I was supposed to look very grateful for the clothes. I hope I look grateful there. So I was thinking about my abuelas, like family, right? And then I was thinking about how this would look in Mercy's life. And then I thought about how my mother always wanted us to live all together. It was her dream. She had a cousin in Miami who lived in 3 houses just like this, these flat top houses that the family had connected one to the other with little hallways and covered roofways. Julia lived in one. Julie lived in the second one, and then Julita, the youngest one, lived in the third. So 3 generations of a family all in one compound. I thought, esta es locura. Right? Who would want to live with relatives because they all tell you what to do, when to wash your hands, what show you can watch. You have to babysit a little cousin. You know how it is. So I thought this was crazy, but my mother thought this was heaven. So when I was writing Merci Suárez Changes Gears, I said, you know what? She's going to live in Florida, and she's going to live in 3 houses with a big Barinsky family. And so I gave her abuela and abuelo, the grandparents. I gave her Tía Inés with these 2 psycho 5-year-old twins that are always getting in trouble. But then I said, okay, I also need to give her a school life and someone at school who really annoys her. So I gave her Edna Santos. Edna Santos, who always says, no offense, but like, no offense, but you don't spell well. No offense, but I don't like your shirt. No offense, but your eyeglasses are funny, etc. We all know an Edna Santos. So I gave her Edna Santos. But I had to give her a bigger problem. And when I'm writing books for kids, I like to tell them the truth. So I was thinking about some of the problems that my own family faced now. And here were some of them. The first, I was remembering Abuela's sewing room and that thing that used to scare me when I slept over at night because it has no head and legs. And at night, it casts big shadows like a ghost. But then I was thinking of current life, and here's my husband's mother. My kids call her Ola, who was in her 90s and had come to live with us at the same time that my mother, who was very sick and in her 80s, had come to live with us too. At the same time that Tía Isa, who was also in her late 70s, had come to live with us. Are you counting? That's 3 old people who came to live with us, okay? And they came to live with us at a time when I had teenage kids who did band and brought friends over and were starting to date. And so las señoras, Abuela and Isa and Ola, were part of our life, but they also did things that drove my kids crazy, like say things like this: do you have a girlfriend? Right? Oh boy. And one time, my son came upstairs, that's him and Ola, and he looked so upset. I said, ¿Qué pasó? And he says, Ola came out to say goodnight to me. I said, so what? ¿Y qué? And he goes, she was not wearing pants. It was very upsetting. And so what ended up happening is that my kids stopped bringing home, you see my son and his friends there. My kids stopped bringing home friends, and they started to leave the table quick And I felt sad about that. And I knew that they missed the grandmothers that they remember that brought them Pokemon and Beyblades and a million stuffed animals. And we were all trying to live together and love each other and understand all the ways we were changing. The way teenagers were changing, the way we change in our 80s. So I wrote that story because eventually my kids did get to the other side. We did figure out how to make that family work. And so it was crazy. And people were butting in and asking crazy questions, but there was a lot of love in that family. And that's what I wanted to write for Merci Suárez Changes Gears. So it's a story that's funny, that has annoying people, that even has an unfortunate eyebrow incident. But it also has loss. And it's the way that we have to say goodbye to the people who matter the most to us. This cover, I just want to give a shout out to Joe Cepeda. Do you know the book Esperanza Rising? So Joe was the artist of that book cover, and I'm so honored that he is the artist of this one. And the last thing I want to say, because I know a lot of you have iPhones, is that Merci Suárez has her dream is to get this bike, right? In the first chapter of the book and throughout, I'm giving away a bike. So if you go to this website, you can enter. It's a small essay of why you want to win a bike, or you just post a picture of yourself on this bike. And on September 11th, which is the official pub date, we're going to pull a name. And if you are willing to drive to Richmond, Virginia, where I live, a mere hour and 45 minutes to the south, you could win a beautiful mountain bike. So check it out on that website. And I think we have like 5 minutes or so for questions. So if you want to ask me anything about Merci, about writing, about my crazy family, now's the time. Anda. Yes, oh, please come to the microphones if you have a question. Nadie? I have stunned you? Okay, then I am going to, last call. Oh, here comes someone. Thank you.
Oh, I just love to talk to you. I just didn't want to hog it up. So I have a Girl Scout troop, and it's a mixture of girls whose heritage is Bolivian. We have one girl who is from, her parents are from Vietnam, and we have another family, they're from Afghanistan. And I'm just sitting here listening to you talk about your culture and how it blossoms, and thinking, that's the kind of things that I love when they start talking and comparing, usually in sort of negative terms, but
Yeah.
you know, how it is in their homes and everything like that.
You know, I think what's really interesting to me is that when you talk to kids from whose families comes from all over the world, you find a lot of similarities, especially around extended families. Like this notion that your grandparents live separate from your parents, live separate from cousins and things, is very unique to us here, but really, typically we live in extended families. And also like the hard things of like explaining this culture to people who are of another culture, like if your grandparents see things from a different perspective, like that's really challenging. But I do love to, I just love to see that.
I just love the way you told that story, and I'm going to try to tell that story to my girls.
Well, get the recording. That could be easier. Hello on this side.
Hello.
Yes.
Were you ever bullied because of the clothes you wear from your tía? Or
Say that again.
were you ever bullied because of your clothes?
Was I ever bullied because of my clothes?
Yeah.
No, because my grandmother was a really good seamstress. So I had some rockin' clothes. But she did a good job, but they weren't, you know, I would have picked jeans, torn jeans and sneakers and things like that. She had other ideas for me.
Okay.
Yes.
Why did you think it was a bad idea for all your family to live in one house?
Because in real life, because I knew how my family was, and everybody had an opinion. and everybody could raise me. So it wasn't my parents, my mother wasn't the only one who could tell me to go to bed or not eat this or do that. Everybody. So it was going to be like having 6 or 7 moms and dads on me. And that felt hard for me. But in the end, when I had everybody living with us, when I was the mom and I had kids, I found that although it was hard, it taught all of us this way of being generous to each other and patient with each other. There were some really sad days together, and then there were also some really happy days together. And I wouldn't trade it. I wouldn't do it differently. Hi there.
When did you start writing books?
Well, unofficially in the 3rd grade, when Mrs. Zuckerman said that I was good at it, and I was really thrilled. But I waited a long time. I wrote all kinds of stuff, like advertisements, and I wrote in little newspapers and things like that. But the year I turned 40, I decided it was now or never, and I quit my job, and I decided I was going to go home and write a novel. And luckily for me, it worked out. Oh, sorry.
Why did you want to start writing?
You know, my family, I come from a family of storytellers. Everything about them, when they were putting away the groceries, when we were driving somewhere, when we were just sitting there, like pulling the rocks out of the bowl of beans or whatever, it was always a story like, I remember the time that little boy got chased in my village by the pig. Oh, I remember the time this man ran away with so-and-so, on and on. It was story and story and story. And my grandmother was the best one because she really knew how to do drama. Like she'd get to the part that you were like on the edge of your seat and she'd say, and you want to know what happened next? And you'd be like, yes. So she was wonderful. And so I learned early on that stories knit us together. I learned early on that stories sort of give you a sense of like what happened before you, right? And I learned imagination through stories. Like just sitting there listening to it, I could imagine Cuba, I could imagine chickens, I could imagine these big juicy mangoes, like all of it. And then it just became part of how I am. Hi.
Sí, hola. Me parece muy interesante tu libro, hablando de muchas familias juntas viviendo, muy común en las familias latinas. Pero yo quisiera saber si estarías interesada en escribir un libro opuesto, como cuando familias no tienen muchos familiares aquí, niños o adolescentes que no tienen muchos tías, que solo viven con los padres. Sería de repente una interesante historia. My question is, I would like to know if you are interested about writing a book of children or teenagers without relatives or family here that come from different countries, and how could be the life of them?
Yeah. Well, I'm going to say this. I think that there are so many tragic stories right now that we can tell through the Latino lens, including children who are here without parents, who've been separated from parents. And in some way, I did that with Tía Isa Wants a car. If you know that picture book of mine, her parents are elsewhere and she's here with Tía Isa. So would I be interested? Yes. But it's always the story of the girl more than the issue. I have to find the connection to the young woman. So I never say never. It's possible. And I think we have only one more question. I'm down to 2 minutes. Yes?
Okay, so my question is about Burn Baby Burn.
Yes!
So what motivated you to write about the son of Sam?
Oh, because I was 14 the year that Son of Sam was murdering girls in my neighborhood. And that is a terrifying experience. And because I was wondering what it's like for teenagers now who sort of have that slow burn of fear in terms of shooters and things like that. And I wanted to just take a look at that history. And right now, my timer is holding up a very sweet sign that says, wrap it up. So I'm going to wrap it up. And I'm so glad that you came. I thought I wasn't going to have anybody, and it's so nice to see your faces. Gracias. Thanks. Bye.